For the storms keep on raging in my life, and sometimes it's hard to tell the night from day. Still that hope that lies within is reassured as I keep my eyes upon the distant shore. I know He'll lead me safely to that blessed place He has prepared. But if the storms don't cease, and if the winds keep on blowing in my life, my soul has been anchored in the Lord. Oh, though the storms keep on raging in my life, and sometimes it's hard to tell the night from day, still that hope that lies within is reassured as I keep my eyes upon the distant shore. I know He'll lead me safely to that blessed place He has prepared. But if the storm don't cease, and if the winds keep on blowing in my life, my soul has been anchored in the Lord. I realize sometimes we're gonna be torn by the waves and the currents that seem so fierce, but in the Word of God I found an anchor, and it keeps me steadfast, unmovable, despite the time. But if the storm don't cease, and just in case those weary winds keep on blowing in my life, my soul has been anchored in. My soul's been anchored. My soul's been anchored. My soul's been anchored. My soul's been anchored. Billows may roll up, breakers may dash. I shall not stray, 'cause God holds me fast. My soul, my soul, my soul, my soul, my soul has been, my soul has been, my soul has been, yeah, my soul has been anchored in the Lord. That is indeed our musical director, Minister Tyrone Richardson, accompanied by
Chris Garland. You know, brothers and sisters, we call this the House of Justice because it's always important that the doors of the House of Justice are always open for those in need. And you never know when you're going to fight or need help in a crisis. And the Crisis Department is such an important part of the work we do here at National Action Network. And Derek Perkinson, who's helping to guide that Crisis Department, is going to come and give us some information now on our crisis work and other activities that are going on. Derek Perkinson.
Good morning, good morning, good morning. National Action Network, a glorious Saturday. Good morning. I'm happy to be here with all of you. My name is Derek Perkinson, New York State Field Director, National Crisis Director for the National Action Network. And this week was a big week for NAN. NAN does a lot of things that a lot of people don't know about. So we kicked off Monday Huddle. And in Monday Huddle, we gave a presentation on the 15 campaigns that the New York City, New York State Field is working on. And a lot of people was interested in that. So please log in back to our live stream on nationalactionnetwork.net. Check out the Youth Huddle segment and check out those campaigns that we're diligently working on. Also, yesterday, the National Action Network partnered with the Brooklyn District Attorney's Office, Eric Gonzalez, at Highland Park event to stand against gun violence. So National Action Network was in Brooklyn. Yes, give it up. Standing against gun violence, as we always do. We had another successful legal night here. Tonight, Thursday, was the last legal night for the summer. We come back in September, so please check for that. And also upcoming, NAN has put together a series of community days. Community Day. We want to build better community between each other, of course, and of course with law enforcement. However, we have partnered with local community-based organizations, clergies, and elected officials in the 5 boroughs. So listen out for the date for your borough. We want you to come out and support. It's going to be a very big deal. Mountain climbing, face painting, food, DJ, and a tech bus will all be at every location and every event. The first event in my Community Day series kicks off this August 5th in Queens, Jamaica Queens chapter. You members will have Greater Springfield Community Church out in Queens. And that's Pastor Phil Craig. He's having an event from August 5th from 11 a.m. to 7 p.m. The next week, we will have Community Day in the borough of Staten Island. So all the Staten Island members, you get out there, the chapter president, Cynthia Davis, she'll be out there on Bay Street for the whole day with the event. August 19th brings Far Rockaway chapter of the National Action Network. Pastor Evan Gray in Far Rockaway Macedonia Church will be having a fantastic community day in Far Rockaway. We always have confirmed Senator Kevin Parker is taking part with that in that effort. And Reverend Sharpton's home church, Bethany Baptist Church in Brooklyn on August 26th. That's right, Pastor Adolphus Lacey. He will have his community day right there on Marcus Garvey in Decatur. So Brooklyn NAN members, please come out and support. And that is 2 days before our March on Washington. So at every event, we are trying to register people for the March on Washington, Saturday, August 28th. That is the purpose. Everybody could register www.nationalactionnetwork.net. And as we end August, we're going to enter September with the New York City chapter, Harlem, September 1st. We're going to do our community day right here in Harlem. We have a lot of partners so far set up for that event, Street Corner Resources, AT&T, and it's going to be a really good event on 143rd. We're going to block off the street from Lenox Avenue all the way to 5th Avenue. So come out, get some food, have some fun. And for all my Bronx NAN members, we are going to try to get our Bronx chapter engaged. On September 9th in the Bronx, we are partnering with the tenant associations on Teller Avenue. So if you guys are 165th Street, 166th Street, and Teller Avenue, we're going to have a community day event, which probably will be the biggest event because it's the last one on the calendar. So all come out for the Bronx event on that day as well. Today at 12:30, we have the Political Action Committee. Please tap in on that. That's a Zoom. And again, our March on Washington, Saturday, August 28th, we're marching on for voting rights, and we need to stop the suppression of voting rights. So I thank you all for having me. Have a great rest of your balance of your day.
All right, thank you, Derek Perkinson, for all of that information. And I tell you, someone who did wake up one morning and her life changed. She's become a partner with National Action Network, and a huge fighter for justice, beginning with her son, Eric Garner, and that's our dear sister, Gwen Carr.
Good morning, NAM family. It's good to be here with you another Saturday morning. It's always a pleasure to come and just to commune with you on Saturdays. I just want to speak about, you know that on August the 28th, we are going to Washington for the voters' rights. And this is very, very important because our voting rights have been gutted so deeply, and we must go and we must address that. But now, along with that, we must insist that we get the George Floyd bill passed also. We cannot leave that out because we need police reform. You know, here in New York State, we got the Eric Garner anti-chokehold bill passed. But that's a state law. That's not a national law. If we get the George Floyd Act passed, that would cover the whole nation. And this is what we need. We need it to be widespread, not just here in New York. We must let them know that police reform is just very important, and we must push for it. And I ask each and every one of you to please push for the George Floyd bill. Call your senators or call the congressmen. Do your part in getting this passed because this affects all of us. It's not just for New York, it's for everybody. And that's who we fight for, everyone. Thank you.
Right now, brothers and sisters, the Change Ensemble under the direction of Minister Tyrone Richardson.
Thou art calling to
That is the Change Ensemble, brothers and sisters. Right now, I want you to get on your feet. If you're at home, I want you to put your hands together for the president and founder of the National Action Network, the Reverend Dr. Al Sharpton.
No justice. No peace. No justice. No peace. No justice. No peace. No justice. No peace. What do we want? Justice. What do we want? Justice. What do we want? Justice. When do we want it? Now. 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 Fist bump the person next to you. Tell them you love them. National Action Network Change Ensemble. Give them a big hand. Give them a big hand. Certainly we're happy to be with you another Saturday morning for our Saturday morning action rally. And for you that are here live at the House of Justice, 106 West 145th Street in the Village of Harlem, and you that are listening live on 1190 WLIB AM in New York, and you that are watching live stream, as well as those that are watching Facebook around the country. We're happy to be with you another Saturday morning to give our report on where the action is. Give a hand to our presider, Attorney Michael Hardy. Certainly we are glad to have been briefed this morning by our sister, Mother Gwen Carr, and to our regional field director, Brother Derek Perkinson. Let me say that we are dedicating the broadcast this morning to the memory and legacy of two people. One, Bob Moses, who passed last week. I did a tribute on my MSNBC show last week. but didn't elaborate on him here. One of the things that always amazes me about a lot of us is that we always deal with things out of context when you don't have history. And a lot of us that are activists, want to be activists, should study activism. Nothing wrong with studying because it only enriches you. You know, a lot of folk like to act like they know what they don't know. And everybody will find out what you don't know by how you behave and what you say. What am I talking about? Bob Moses was in a certain strain of movement that chose a certain way to go that was just as effective as what others did. There've always been different streams of activism. Everybody never did the same thing. If you study any history at all, ever since we were brought here enslaved, there were always different people that responded different ways to the same issue of emancipating or freeing the slaves. Am I right? I'm going to try to break this down because some of y'all in radio land get confused. There was never where everybody was on the same page. All of this talk of back in the day when we were unified is an illusion. There never was a day that all of us was together. But there was days where all of us found common ground. I try to tell a lot of our young people in NAN and in our huddle group and our chapters that the reason why they are in many ways rattled by discord, and I am not rattled by it, is because never was there a time in my activism that I did not see there was discord. There's always folk fighting. And I remember when I started in Operation Breadbasket when I was 12, and they used to get to fighting and arguing, and then the folk in the other parts of the movement would get to fighting and arguing. And it used to concern me. I come out to church and everybody sing the same hymn book and get up and praise God the same way. I ain't never seen all this fight. And one of Dr. King's aides, who came to New York, organizing a war against genocide, name was Reverend James Bevel. And Bevel was one of the great thinkers. And Bevel said that Dr. King used to say it was never the thesis or the antithesis, it was the synthesis that made movements go. And that you want creative tension. Because out of the arguments, you're going to come to the middle and have creative tension to move forward. Based on that, when they were moving around the issue of public accommodations and around voting rights, there was some that went in a black church organizing method. That was Dr. King. Had a boycott in Montgomery. Churches started convening on a nightly basis. Had rallies at churches every night. Pastor of First Baptist Church in Montgomery, Alabama, Reverend Ralph David Abernathy, he got up and said, we need to put structure to this because you cannot last without structure. That's why a lot of groups you see pop up don't last because they don't ever build a structure. You can't have a building without a structure. Difference between a pile of rocks and a building is that somebody organized the pile of rocks into a structure. Weak structure, weak building. So they built a structure called the Montgomery Improvement Association. I'm taking this slow because I want y'all to get this, because I don't want people to be continually confused. The Montgomery Improvement Association was to put structure to the ongoing Montgomery bus boycott. Because there was so much jealousy and envy, y'all don't know nothing about that, between the leaders and the preachers in town, Abernathy said, let's nominate the new guy in town, because nobody know him, nobody mad about him. And if we make him the president, y'all won't fight, because if you make one of us, we got grudges against this, grudges against that. And Abernathy nominated a new guy, a new pastor, who had just come, had a PhD from Boston University, wasn't from Montgomery, was from Atlanta, and was pastoring the Dexter Avenue Baptist Church. Now, Dexter Avenue was the church that the more middle class, well-to-do blacks in Montgomery go to. So some of the more lumpen proletariat black churches say, well, why y'all gonna have these elitists as the head? But he nominated this young man, his name was Martin Luther King. King won the election, became the head of the Montgomery Improvement Association. At the same time they were boycotting, there were others saying, we don't agree with the boycott. But they were able to successfully do that. Out of the boycott, they were able to break the Montgomery, Alabama laws that had the buses the way they were, and they expanded moving around the South. At the same time, there were young students out of Nashville that started a student nonviolent coordinating committee. Y'all still with me? Now, King and them went to Baton Rouge, Louisiana, and formed a regional structure called the Southern Christian Leadership Conference. The pastor in Baton Rouge was named Reverend Jemison, who later became the head of the National Baptist Convention. And that's where they met, and that's where they formed SCLC. Those that formed SNCC were not church folks. They were people that had been in colleges and were organizing and were secular. Y'all got me? Some of them were freedom riders. Their job was, they felt, to break up interstate segregation by getting on buses, Greyhound buses, that would go state to state. And many of them were beaten and brutalized when they would get in certain stops and try to go in the Greyhound waiting room, because the law was blacks weren't allowed. Okay? So you got the Freedom Riders over here. You got SNCC organizing here. You got SCLC. Some of the students were saying, we are not in SCLC, them pork chop, chicken eating preachers. That's what they said. Some of the preachers said, they don't go to our churches, they don't mean nothing. Some of the Freedom Riders saying, we the ones getting beat up while the students in the ivory towers and while the preachers is in their Cadillacs in the church. All of that was going on at the same time. Then you had in the North, Adam Clayton Powell, who was elected to office saying, let's have political power, and had done the Harlem bus boycott. And then you had a new rising tide of black consciousness that was symbolized and personified by a young minister from a religion we were just hearing about, Islam, called Malcolm X. All of this at the same time. Bob Moses, who was part of the founding of the SNCC young folks, said that we're going to go in the deep Mississippi Delta and register folks to vote, and we're going to break the back of voter suppression in Mississippi. And he and Ella Baker and others came out of a mold and model that said we don't believe in single leadership and we don't believe in the black church structure. We believe in agrarian leadership, and we're going to do it with no leadership. That was their style. A lot of what you later saw, what Occupy Wall Street believed in, that collective leadership. Some of the elements of Black Lives Matter movement was that. None of that new. That's why when you hear these folks talk about old school, all of it's old school. Everything you see now, we've seen before. What is new to you is that you're reading now. If you had read before you opened your mouth, nobody would have known what you didn't know. Occupy wasn't the first folk to have a leaderless movement. Black Lives was not the first to have a leaderless movement. They did that in Mississippi. They did that with the Freedom Riders. Wasn't no head of the Freedom Riders. Wasn't no head of summer, Mississippi summer 64. But there was a head in those structures that were organized like that. My argument this morning in memorizing Bob Moses is that we needed all of them. We needed the black church structure that came out of SCLC. We needed the black student movement that came out of SNCC. We needed Malcolm, we needed the Freedom Riders, we needed all of that. Because when you are fighting an enemy that is like an octopus with so many branches, you need all the branches you got to fight the enemy. Now, fast forward to where we are today. 35 years ago, my firstborn, Dominique, was born today. What that got to do with anything? Well, what it has to do with something is when she was born, in July of '86, July 31st in 1986. She don't like me to remind her she was born last century. That December, a young man was killed for being in Howard Beach because he was black, named Michael Griffith. That December, which is 5 months after she was born. When I went to march in Howard Beach to protest the killing of Michael Griffith, who was killed only because they said they didn't allow blacks in the neighborhood. She was only 5 months old. Let's welcome our Impact Television family. As we went, many of you remember that are old enough, you that are not old enough, sometimes we don't realize that some folk don't remember stuff because they wasn't here. You can't remember what happened if you wasn't born yet. You can't remember Howard Beach if you're 30 years old, because Howard Beach was 36 years ago, 35 years ago. So, Sam Roberts, I know you remember when Noah had the ark. I'm talking about other folk in here. Now, if you remember when the story was told, Michael Griffith and Cedric Sanford and Timothy stopped because their car broke down. And they walked up to Cross Bay Boulevard, Parkway, to a pizzeria to ask for help. That's where the folk got around them, what you doing in our neighborhood, you know, N-word, all of that, and ran them to the Belt Parkway where a car killed Michael Griffith. My idea was that since they went to the pizzeria where the conspiracy started, the scene of the crime, we were going to have a motorcade to the pizzeria and show that we can go wherever we want in this city, and we are not going to tolerate that. That's December '86. We called a motorcade. Only problem I had in calling a motorcade is I didn't even have a car. I was calling on folk right out there, and I was going to have to ride the train. Union leader called me named Jim Bell and said, it's a great idea about a motorcade. Me and my union to back you up. I told him, great, can you pick me up because I need to ride somebody. As we rode out to Howard Beach, Reverend Herbert Daughtry met us out there. There was some saying, why they going to Howard Beach? We don't care about going in no white neighborhood. We are only in our community. Even then there's always been divisions. We said whether you're going to stay in your community or not, all our people are not able to do that. Some have to work in these communities, some have to deal. We fight for our rights, and there was tension. I looked up as we went, 50 of us, 100 or so whites surrounded, calling us the N-word. Dominique, 5 months old. Her mother, Kathy, brought her there in a pink blanket. I got the pictures. Dominique grew up marching, couldn't even walk yet. But Kathy brought out first march. My kids grew up marching. So when you see them in huddle, it is in their DNA because they grew up in this. They're not in this because they my children. They're in this because they were here when we got eggs thrown at us and when blacks would debate us. Biggest problem we had is that it wasn't as harmful, well, I won't say harmful, wasn't as painful as whites in Howard Beach and later Bensonhurst and Gina and all of that whites would call us N-word or whites would threaten us. What was painful is when you come back to the black community and people call you names saying you shouldn't have went out there and what are you doing? But no pain, no gain. If you gonna run this race, those that should be with you are gonna be the ones to condemn you. They called Dr. King too soft. Last time Martin Luther King came to New York, he came in March of 1968 to install Wyatt T. Walker, the pastor of Canaan Baptist Church, to do the installation service. They threw eggs at Dr. King's car, calling him a sellout, saying we don't want that nonviolence in New York. 3 weeks later, he was killed in Memphis. And the same militant Negroes that threw eggs at him was calling Martin Luther King Memorial Days. We always had to get by our differences. We always had to get by our different ways of viewing things. And it was always peppered by envy and jealousy. A lot of folks try a different agenda because of ego. Now, Bob Moses, the reason I memorialize him, was one that believed in what he was doing and did not need he didn't come out of a model of the black church. He believed in what he was doing and didn't need the credit in order to do it. Some folk won't do nothing unless you give them the credit. You don't call their name, they mad. Because they're more concerned about getting credit than doing what they're trying to get credit for. So I memorialize Bob Moses. Secondly, and some of y'all that are younger or middle-aged to young know we lost an artist, one of the pioneers in hip-hop, named Biz Markie. And I was honored that his wife called the other day. This funeral will be Monday in Long Island, and she's asked me to do the eulogy for Biz Markie on Monday. And I told her I would because Biz Markie has always been not only a great hip-hop artist and spinner and all that. Nobody knew how to do those sets like him. He's always been available and strong in the community. I told you a long time ago, I stopped doing everybody's funeral because I stopped having to get up and make up stuff to say about folk that they ain't never done. I keep telling y'all, everybody in here gonna have a funeral one day. And don't live in a way that a preacher gotta get up and lie over your dead body. Oh, the community is sad, this great loss. We ain't lost nothing. You wasn't doing nothing. You was grumbling and mumbling and complaining and preachers. Because I'm not preaching everybody's funeral. Give everybody, when their family come, give them the directory. And these are the folk that'll do your funeral that's available. I'm not available unless there's something for me to say. Tell y'all that now. Don't get mad at them. I'm telling you right now. I am not going to hell lying over your body. And I've done a lot of funerals. I did James Brown's funeral, Michael Jackson's funeral, spoke at Aretha's funeral. I've done some historic funerals, Busy Now, Biz Markie. But all of them, I had something to say. And one of the things I'm saying all that for, is some humor in it, but I'm saying to you is you ought to think about, whether you are 20 or 80, that one day your life will be over. And what can anyone say your life meant if you haven't done nothing for nobody and nothing for anything bigger than you? If all you did in life was for yourself, when you die, and believe me, you're gonna die, it will not matter to anybody but yourself. If all you do, get you a nice car, get you a nice house, get you a nice wardrobe, talk about how good and bad you are, 2 minutes after you die, it will not matter. 2 minutes after you die, we'll ride all over Harlem in your car and never tell nobody it used to be yours. We'll sell your house. Your family will. The only thing that will matter after you're gone that no one can take from you is what you stood for and what you did. That's why we remember Bob Moses. That's why we remember Bismarck. Now, in that spirit, that's why when we are going to Washington, August 28th, and you heard Gwen Carr talking about, we're going to deal with the voting rights protection and with George Floyd. We are going, when we tell people to get up early in the morning and get on buses all over the country in the wee hours of the morning, it is not to do ego for us. It was if we allow them to end voter protection in our generation, we make mockery of those that paid the price to get us the right to vote, and getting us the right to vote got you the job you working in and the house you living in. We are going to go because we owe, because people pay the price, and we're not going to let them take back what was paid on our behalf. Now, they are talking about there are now over 20 states that are changing the voting laws. Why are they changing them? Because last year was the highest voting turnout in the history of this country. And blacks turned out higher than any numbers you've seen. Watch this. In a pandemic, we turned out. At a time you thought that we would be afraid to come out, we came out in bigger numbers than we ever came out. That's when they said, wait a minute, we've got to make it more difficult. How are we going to make it more difficult? Let's close some of the voting sites, particularly in the black community. Let's end a lot of the early voting days, particularly the Sundays where they have Sunday souls to the polls, where they march from the churches and have people to vote. Let's have ID on absentee ballots. Just all kind of stuff. Because a lot of seniors, because I don't care what y'all say, we love and concentrate and focus on the youth vote, but the solid vote, particularly in our community, are the seniors. Well, a lot of seniors don't drive, so they don't have driver's license for ID. A lot of them don't travel abroad. They don't have passport. So we're going to make it as hard as possible. Photo ID. All of this going on all over the country. So we are saying that you've got to pass the John Lewis voting bill, and you got to pass Senate Bill 1 to protect us from state law. That's why I went through that long part earlier. When Dr. King and SNCC and CORE and other groups began dealing with segregation, they first won in Alabama, but it didn't mean anything next door in Georgia or Mississippi. That's why they went with a national law, which superseded the segregation laws in each individual state. The reason we're going in August 28th is we're putting pressure on national legislation. If we get a national John Lewis law, it will supersede the laws in Texas and Florida and Georgia that they're passing. When they had the decision in 2013 of Shelby versus Holder, what they did was take out Section 4, which was pre-clearance, and Section 5, which was the map. What was pre-clearance? Pre-clearance meant Georgia couldn't do what it's doing now, change the voting laws without it clearing the Justice Department. And the Justice Department would have to say, no, that's unfair to blacks, you can't do that. When they took the map out, Georgia was on that map that was in Section 4 and 5. When they took the map out, Georgia didn't have to pre-clear. Texas didn't have to pre-clear. Florida didn't have to pre-clear. And the rest of these states, Wisconsin, all these states didn't have to pre-clear. The John Lewis bill that we are trying to get passed now would put states back in where they couldn't make any changes without it clearing the Justice Department. Sam, I'm preaching this morning. All right, that's enough. Now, me and Sam go way back. He thinks that this is a duo, this is a solo. We used to do duos when we was on the corner. We in the House of Justice now. Now, the bill that needs to pass can only pass if we force the Democrats to stand up and some Republicans to flip, or we go around the Republicans with changing the filibuster or having the carve out where they make an exception to the filibuster. I want to take my time on this because a lot of folk watching on the Impact and a lot of folk listen on radio don't understand why we marching. They have what they call the carve-out around anything that deals with fiscal or economic things. If it's taxes, you don't need 60 votes in the Senate. You don't, just the majority, 51. McConnell, who's the head Republican in the Senate, goes around the filibuster number to pass judges that he wants, confirmed judges. So we're saying if you can go around the 60 votes for fiscal policy, or if you can go around the 60 votes for judges, you can go around 60 votes for anything dealing with voting, because voting is a constitutional right. So we're not asking for something you don't already do. We're asking for you to include the constitutional right to vote just like you do budgets. Now, that's what we're marching about. So we went to Washington, Martin Luther King III, Andrea King, his wife, Al Sharpton, went to Washington this Wednesday. We asked to meet with Senator Manchin. We asked to meet with Lindsey Graham. We asked to meet with the Speaker of the House, Nancy Pelosi. We asked to meet with the Majority Leader, Senator Chuck Schumer, the Majority Whip of the House, Jim Clyburn, Head of the Democratic Caucus, Hakeem Jeffries, Chair of the Black Congressional Caucus, the Congressional Black Caucus, Congresswoman Joyce Beatty. All of them we met with. Got outside, I met with Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, Jamal Bowman. Why? Because we wanted to make clear 30 days or more before the march what we marching for. And we wanted to know where y'all are at on this legislation. Manchin, we keep hearing them say that you will only do it if it is bipartisan. Are you saying, Senator Manchin, that unless some Republicans vote with you, that you're not going to protect our right to vote? Well, we're trying to work on a compromise. But will it compromise our right to vote? Now, we can march with you or on you on August 28th. But we always have conversation for confrontation. But we want you to be clear on what we're saying. There can be no compromise if it does not protect us with pre-clearance and getting rid of all this nonsense that interferes with our right to vote. You ain't got to wonder whether they spend it wrong on the news. I'm sitting here. Martin Luther King III sitting there telling you in your office. Went on to Lindsey Graham, same thing. By the way, Mr. Senator Graham, Where are you all on the George Floyd bill? Well, Reverend, we close. Close to what? Well, we got to deal with qualified immunity. Well, let me tell you, qualified immunity has to be in the bill. Because unless folks know that they are going to be subject to liability, they're not going to change. See, part of qualified immunity, for y'all that don't know, a lot of folk, nod like they know what I'm talking about and have no idea what I'm talking about. Qualified immunity means that you can't sue the police departments or the policemen. The city to pay for it, but the departments and the counties don't have to pay nothing. That means that they're immunized. We're saying, no, we got to be able to sue the counties and the departments and the police. Why? Because if a county knows that it can be sued, it will train its police better or suspend them when they do wrong. They will lie for the cop if it ain't gonna cost them nothing. Because they have nothing to lose. You got to have some skin in the game. Am I right? Some of y'all play lotto. Everybody can talk about what number to play on your dollar. But if they got their dollar on, they'll tell you to shut up. Some of y'all go down Atlantic City. Everybody go to the blackjack table on your $100. I didn't say who was going to Atlantic City. I said some was going. Some of y'all start throwing up your hands and tell on yourself. You got to have skin in the game. We want the police department and the counties to have skin in the game of making police follow the law and stop subjecting us to murderous and injurious behavior. That has to happen in the George Floyd bill. Went on to Clyburn and Pelosi and them. Clyburn raised a good point that a lot of us miss. He said, Reverend, y'all are right. Martin, y'all are right in what y'all are raising. One of the things you've got to also march about and deal with is your father. He looked in Martin III. Your father said on August 28th, 1963, which is the day 58 years later we going in 2021. Whose lips were dripping with the words of interposition and nullification. Big words. He said, but what they are practicing right now is nullification. When Georgia just put a bill through saying that they will choose who are the county commissioners to count the vote, who counts the vote can nullify what the vote is. If you run for office and the guys that you're running against are in charge of counting the vote and they give you a bad count, that is nullification. When you allow states to decide who are the election commissions, that will lead to nullification. That's part of this bill. So when we ask you to go to Washington, it is not a bus outing, even though we provide buses. It is about standing up to protect our not having nullification, to protect our not having these laws that will make it difficult to vote. Okay, Reverend, I like that, but that's getting up early in the morning and all that, and it's a Saturday, it's my only day off, and I'm more into economics. Well, what can you do in economics without somebody elected decided that you can do it? You can't open a business unless somebody zones it that it's a business district. You can't bank unless you follow the FDIC laws of banking, which is set by elected officials. You go to the bank tomorrow, you can have $500,000. They're going to ask, what is your name, what is your corporate entity, and you have to follow these bank laws, and you can't deposit that money here. That's why back in the day, number runners couldn't bank their money. That's what Derek told me. I know nothing about it, but they had to keep their money in the house. All of that is based on voting. Well, I ain't in the business. I'm in the police reform. We can't get a George Floyd bill unless those that we voted for go in there and make the Senate and others that's with them vote for it. Whatever you want to say is still going to come down to voting has to be protected in order for us to get it. Public sentiment. One of the things that everybody we met with all of those in power in the Senate and in the Congress on Wednesday. The one thing every one of them said was capitalized by Lindsey Graham, who was a Republican who told me he wasn't with voting rights. Me and him argued the whole half hour, 40 minutes we was in his office. But he said something to me that was instructive, and the others said it in other ways. He said, Reverend Sharpton, I just want to say something to you, Reverend Al. I said, what's that? He said, you know, I'm senator from South Carolina. I knew James Brown well, and I know James Brown helped raise you. He says, if I was where you are, I'd be doing exactly what you're doing. And if you were where I am, you'd be doing what I'm doing. Meaning that the only way you're going to get what you want is to do what you're doing, marching and protesting. And the only way I'm going to stay in the Senate for the folk that want to stop y'all is I got to try to stop y'all, and one of us going to have to outdo the other. That's what he's saying. To my face. Now, in '63, when Dr. King went to Washington, we all talk about I Have a Dream, and we all romanticize that day, and Mahalia sung her song, and all of that. But there were blacks right here in Harlem that was calling it a farce on Washington. Not the March on Washington. They call it the farce on Washington. They had buttons out. Called it a picnic. Saying they're going down there kissing Kennedy's behind. I'm telling you what they said. King and them went anyway. There were elements that was against the march. And there are going to be elements against this march. But you keep your eye on the prize and march anyhow. Movements are not popularity contests. Movements are you got to move anyhow. If there is no opposition, then you are not doing anything of consequence. I remember when I was just a teenager in the movement, and we were doing a boycott of A&P. A&P stores was the biggest retail stores, supermarket chain in the country. It was Walmart before Walmart. And I remember some of my friends talking about we ought to be building our own stores, Ungawa. We had about $3.25 between us, but we gonna build our own store. And we was protesters saying, those blacks that own businesses, you need to put their products on the shelves and put them on blacks on the board, all of that. And I remember I got in a big argument standing in front of one of the A&P stores with one of the guys criticizing us. And again, Reverend Bevel, wait till we got back to Bethany Baptist Church, we'd always go out, pick it, come back to the church. He said, let me tell you something, Sharpton. He said, you grew up a boy preacher, you didn't play sports. I said, no. He said, I played a little bit of ball. You ever watch a football game? I said, yeah. He said, what you see in a football game is the stadium is full. Half of the crowd is for one team. The other half is for the other team. He said, so when the quarterback throws the ball, one huddle to get this, and you catch the ball, and you start running, half of the crowd is going to be cheering you. Half of the crowd going to be jeering you. Your job is not to get intoxicated by the cheers or get rattled by the jeers. Your job is to get the ball across the goal line. They got what they call tacklers, and their job is to stop you from getting to the goal line. So you got to run holding the ball. Be ready to jump over the tacklers that go for your legs, or strong enough for the tacklers that are on your back that you may have to run with them on your back. It don't matter if you have to jump or run with weight on your back. As long as you get across the goal line, you scored for the team. I'm telling you, there are going to be all kind of folks cheering and jeering. Our goal is to get the John Lewis bill passed. Our goal is to get Senate Bill 1 passed. Some folk gonna be arguing this, arguing that. I want this, I want that. All of that is tacklers. Keep your eye on the goal line. Guy called me the other night, Reverend Al, who's on the program? Whoever can get us across the goal line. Keep your eye on the prize. If you're going to interfere with us getting a goal line, we don't need you on program. This ain't about your ego. If you're going to get in the way of our scoring, because our people are in the middle of COVID now, and they need their health care. Our seniors need their housing. Our young people that's already been out of school a year, that are living in broadband deserts, need education. This is bigger than you being on the evening news. We got to get our ball across the goal line. Difference between ego and agenda. I meet with groups. That's why I stopped meeting a few years back. Let Derek and Katrina meet with folks. When Derek first come here, field director, he had a full head of hair. He done rubbed all his hair out of his head. Because these folk run you crazy. Because at the end of the day, it's all about them. Why can't I do this? Why ain't I do this? Why can't I? My toe hurt. I want to see Reverend Sharpton personally and show him my toe. All kind of craziness. Well, go over there and talk to Sister Sue. She got some toe medicine. No, I want Sharpton to see my toe. I got 10 toes of my own. Just keep your eye on the goal line and keep running. Know why you are doing what you're doing. I told you the other week, we said we're going to build a museum. So right there is nowhere in Harlem can you go and see an exhibit on Marcus Garvey. Nowhere in Harlem can you see the papers of Adam Clayton Powell, Mary Cloud Bethune. All that happened here. Niggas gonna argue me about what the developer did this, other. I ain't the developer, I ain't got nothing to do with the developer. I'm building a museum right where we were, been here over a decade and a half. Everybody working here, live in the neighborhood. But you want to confuse people rather than the goal. The goal should be, why are we in 2021 and there's no place housing the artifacts and the story of our people in the whole village of Harlem? Everybody houses their artifacts. Something crazy that they can have a hip-hop museum and ain't got a civil rights museum. And all of it started right here in Harlem, the Harlem bus boycott, the Harlem Renaissance, the fight around rent strikes, all of that right here. And you against that? Something wrong with you. You're a tackler, but we going for the goal line. They got a museum in Montgomery talking about the Scottsboro boys. But what about the museum in Harlem about the Central Park Five? We got a story too. But that's why sometimes when I would get discouraged, I go to the book and I read the Bible. Because the Bible is not only history, it's instructive. And it'll show you things that you're going to go through and how you get through it. So I was in conversation with Attorney Hardy and Katrina and Derek about some of the stuff we got to deal with here and how we got Reverend Toon on the phone about building up for the march. And you hear this one call about this and this one attacking that and this one agenda and all of this confusion. And I went and read some in the book. I was watching a tape, one of our ministers. It drove me to the book where the Bible talked about how God woke up a prophet named Ezekiel. And he gave Ezekiel a vision. I want y'all to hear this, man. I'm through in 5 minutes. It was not an actuality. You know, we growing up, we used to sing that song about dry bones, like it really happened. It was a vision. And in the vision, he brought Ezekiel to a valley of dry bones. All of these scattered dry bones. And he asked Ezekiel, can these bones live? Y'all with me so far? Now, even that is strange. Why would God be asking Ezekiel, can he live? Ezekiel had the right answer. He didn't try and ad-lib or freestyle. He said, thou knowest. Put it back to God, thou knowest. And what did God say to Ezekiel? He said, look at the bones and prophesy to the bones. Now, it seems to be off for God to tell you to prophesy to some dead, dry bones. But sometimes, Attorney Hardy, you got to speak to folks who are dead and dry, because God may wake them up if you just speak to them anyhow. I know they talking mess, but speak to them anyhow. I know they confused, but speak to them anyhow. I know they've been dried up and their hope is gone. That's what dry bones are. They done belittled you. They done dehumanized you. They done made you less than equal. They didn't give you the worst neighborhood, the worst housing, the worst schools, dry bones. Speak to them anyhow. And when you speak to the bones, God will start assimilating the different parts of the bones. Notice now, he didn't have Ezekiel connect the bones. Ezekiel might have put the ankle bone near the ear. It's important that God reconnect the bones, because everything must be put in the place that connects to the other part. See, that's the reason why a lot of y'all's life is messed up. You keep trying to force things that don't fit. You're trying to force people in your life that don't fit. You're trying to force relationships that don't fit. If it don't fit, let it go. Because if you connect the ankle bone to your ear, you can't walk. Ankle bone got to be connected to the leg, because that connection gives you the strength to walk. That's why God said, let me connect the bones. And when they got through connecting the bones, God said, what's missing? Still not, you got connected bones. That's why I don't see some movements take off connected, but it still don't live. Why? Because you are not alive till you have breath in your body. And the breath is the movement and the fervor and the determination. And they said when God breathed breath into the bones, they became alive. It is our duty to deal in this valley of dry bones, all over Black America, all over this country, dry bones in the valley. We got more people that can vote than are registered and go out, but they just dry bones laying in the valley. We got more people that can march that ain't got nothing to do on a Saturday the 28th, but they just dry bones laying in the valley. We got more people that could be spending time volunteering to organizations, helping to educate our children, but they just dry bones laying in the valley. If we prophesy to these bones, if we tell these bones that you were not born to lay around dry and dead, but that you can get up and be what God would have you be, if you connect and stand up, God will breathe the breath of life. Dry bones will stand up and be erect and be new in the spirit of a living God. These bones, these dry bones, hear the word of the Lord. It's time for us to speak to these dry bones. That's why my mama didn't have no degree in theology. Never read a book on homiletics. But she taught us that if the Spirit was in us, it didn't matter how dry our circumstances appeared, that the Spirit of God will make you alive. I used to wake up in the morning, she'd be fixing grits and eggs and humming over the pot, I want Jesus to walk with me. I want Jesus to walk with me while I'm on this tedious journey. She didn't say, I want a new book. She said, I want Jesus. She didn't say, I need my girlfriends. I want Jesus. She didn't say, I need the one in my prayer circle. I want Jesus to walk with me. She hit the second verse, hold my hand. Hold my hand. I used to kind of get annoyed at hearing the same song every morning. All I wanted was breakfast. All I wanted was to know why Daddy wasn't coming home. But when I got older and started reading nasty stuff in the newspaper and having to deal with being attacked even by those that should have been supporting me, I learned what Mama was saying would be the breath in my dry bones. All I need now is Jesus to walk with me. I know they're going to criticize us. I know they're going to attack us between now and Washington, but while I'm on this tedious journey, hold my hand, and walk with me. I can make it if you walk with me. I can take it if you walk with me. I won't give up if you walk with me. I won't give in if you walk with me. While I'm on this tedious journey, I don't care what you call me. I don't care what you say about me. I don't care what lie you spin. I got Jesus walking with me. Walk with me, Jesus. Walk with me, Jesus. Walk with me, Jesus.
I want Jesus to walk with me. I want Jesus to walk with me while I'm on this Jesus journey. I want Jesus to walk with me. Oh, hold my hand, Lord. Please walk with me. Oh, hold my hand, Lord. Please walk with me. While I'm on this Jesus journey. Oh, I want Jesus to hold my hand. Oh, you walk with my mother. Please walk with me. Yeah, you walk with my mother. Lord, walk with me. While I'm on this Jesus journey. Yeah, I need you, Jesus. Oh, Lord, to walk with me. Yeah, walk with me, Lord. Please walk with me. Oh, walk with me, Lord. Please walk with me. Oh, while I'm on this Jesus journey. Oh, I need you, Jesus. Please, oh Lord, to walk with me.
Everybody's singing. Everybody's singing. Everybody's singing. Everybody's singing. Sing it like you mean it. Sing it like you mean it. Everybody's singing. Everybody's singing. Everybody's singing. I'm gonna open the doors of the movement. There may be someone here today in the auditorium that listens to us on the radio.